Hello and good morning, CTS231 Section 875 students for the Fall 2016 semester at Anne Arundel Community College. This is the Cisco Networking Academy CCNA 4 course, in other words, the Connecting Networks course, the last of 4 courses before you ramp up to hopefully take and pass the CCNA exam. This morning's video tutorial is going to be on Packet Tracer Activity 3.1.2.7, and this is going to be on troubleshooting serial interfaces. You can see it's interesting. The activity already gives you down here in the lower right-hand corner, you're already given 20 points. So we're going to go ahead and walk through things here one router at a time to try and troubleshoot the scenario. So this scenario is basically that we are the telco and we should be communicating with these 4 customer sites here over these serial connections. So diagnose and repair the physical connections. So examine the addressing table to determine the location of the DCE connection. Now, the DCE connection is typically the connection that you find on the provider side of things, right? And the data terminal equipment connection is typically on the customer side. So let's go ahead and get on to the telco router here, which is going to be this top router. And actually, before we do that, let me real quickly adjust the options here so we can get the text nice and large. Hopefully it'll be a little easier to see. All right, so 20 it is. So let's pull the telco router up here. And let's enlarge things so that we can see what's going on. All right, there we go. And on to the CLI we go. So from the telco router, let's go from user exec mode to privilege exec mode, and sometimes you'll hear it referred to as enable mode. And let's say show IP interface brief, and let's see what we've got here, because this is going to tell us a lot about the situation. So we can see that serial 000-001 and so forth, that it looks like the only up interface here is serial 000. Everybody else is either down, or serial 011 is in the up-down. Now, remember that the status and the protocol, and let me get the drawing tool up here. When we talk about the status, we're talking about layer 1 connectivity, right? The physical layer. When we talk about the protocol, we're talking about layer 2, or the data link layer, in terms of what is up and what is down. So you can see here, this is ideal. This is what we want to see, is up. However, here we've got layer 1 and layer 2 are both down, but here we've got layer 1 up and layer 2 is down. So let's go ahead and clear our screen here and diagnose. We'll start with part 1. So examine the addressing table to determine the location of the DCE connections. Each serial connection has a DCE and a DTE connection. To determine if the telco interface is using the correct end of the cable, look on the 3rd line of the output of the following command. So in other words, show controllers. So here from the telco, let's go ahead and type that in. Show controllers, and it looks like it's going to have us go down very slowly here, and we can see that this actually shows me that the DC end of the cable here is on serial 000. So if we clear the screen and we scroll down a little further, down to our next connection here, there's a lot of output you can see here. And we'll talk about some of these other things. So HDLC, right? Remember, HDLC is the Cisco, it's the Cisco proprietary version of HDLC, but it's the Cisco default. So now we get to the next serial interface, serial 001. You can see again, we are the DCE, right? Again, remember, the DCE is typically on the provider side, and the DTE is going to be that data terminal equipment that is on the customer side. So we'll scoot down here to the next interface, serial 010. You can see again we are the DCE. And let's go ahead and continue down here to the last interface. Again, quite a bit going on here. Now we get down here and we see, for some reason, serial 011 has been set. It is set as a DTE, or the data terminal equipment. It says reverse any cables that are incorrectly connected. Now this note here, in real network settings, the DCE, which sets the clock rate, is typically a CSU DSU. And I'm going to add on here to this comment that 10, 15 years ago, yeah, this was the case, right, when we talked about having a CSU, DSU. However, the book did a very good job of pointing out that a CSU, DSU is a standalone device that those have pretty much sunsetted. In fact, we recently had at one of our disaster recovery facilities, we actually had from AT&T a CSU, DSU standalone device that was used between the router and the DMARC, right, or the provider connection. And when it failed about 5 months ago, we contacted AT&T and they said, we're sorry that unit is so old that they no longer provide those units. And it makes sense, right? Because when you buy Cisco EHWIC cards, right, or those enhanced high-speed WAN interface cards, or an HWIC card, a high-speed WAN interface card, the CSU DSU is typically built onto those units. The lab units that you see me pull up here at my house, the Cisco 1841s, those HWIC cards have the CSU DSU functionality built into them. You no longer need that separate device. And so again here you can see that it's the same with the DTE DCE as well, that in a lot of cases that is sort of auto-magically negotiated for you. It's not something that you need to go in and set. But let's take a look at our show run here, and we saw that out of all those connections that were there, that the serial 011, I believe it was, the serial 011 was set to the DTE. I'm sorry, yeah, set to a DTE. It should be a DCE. So now we need to pull our diagram up here, and I believe that is going to be. Oops, sorry. That is going to be the serial 011 connection here. It's one of these two connections, and typically when you mouse over it, it will show you, but it appears that it is not going to show. So let's double check this. Let's make sure. So serial 011 from the telco is 64.134.29. That's going to be connected to router 4. So we can't get it mousing over. For some reason, it's not showing me when I mouse over there. Typically it does, but we know that that is the connection, right? So we need to change this connection here and make it so that it is properly connected. So I'm going to click on the X there, and we're going to click on that link, and now that link is gone, right? So now I'm going to unclick the X because we're going to add in, we're going to click on our Connections tab, and you can see here that these are the serial connections, right? We've got some different connections here, but that is the serial DCE. You can see it lit up down there, serial DCE, rather small, and then serial DTE. So I'm going to click on DCE, and we're going to make that connection at the telco side on serial 011. And I'm going to drag it down here to router 4, and on router 4 that's going to be serial 001. So you can see I connected up and the links come back up. So now let's go ahead. You can see that it went down and then came back up. I remember I deleted it and then brought it back, re-added it in there with the connections on the right side. So now if I were to say show controllers, I could say this and hit enter. And again, we're going to have to scroll through all this output here, right? Or I could say show controllers on the controller I'm interested in seeing, serial 011. And when we take a look, we can see that it's now changed to the DCE V.35 connection type. And if you look down here in your lower right, you'll see we were given 10 points, and that indicates that we've got things properly set up now. So I'm going to scroll down a little further here. So now let's take a look at step number 2 here. So diagnose and repair incorrect port connections. So look at the addressing table. We're going to match the port to the customer port to the telco port. And again, you can see here where it says hold the mouse over each wire to ensure that things are properly connected. If not, correct the connection. So we weren't having much luck earlier when I moused over. And maybe I didn't wait long enough, so I'm waiting here, waiting. So here's what we're going to do. We're basically going to have to take a look at the telco connection here. This may be a little more difficult than first thought. So let's go ahead and say show run, because since we can't mouse over it, we're going to have to take a look here. So serial 000, is 64.134.17. So that's correct. I'm basically cross-referencing what I see in, or actually configured on the router with what we have up here. So serial 000, it ends in 17. It's a /30, that looks good. Serial 001, 3421, it's a /30, so that checks out. 3425 is also a /30, that checks out. And that was serial 010. Then we had serial 011, which is 3429, which is a /30. So the IPs and the interfaces being used here, those check out. So now let's go ahead, maybe the culprit here, and let me clear our screen. There we go. Maybe the culprit is with one of our client routers. So let's start here with router 1. Whoops. Let's see if we can grab that and increase our size. We'll jump onto the CLI here, and you can see router 1 says serial 000. So let's go into privilege exec and say show run. And there's the serial 000 interface, and it is using the IP address of 34.17. Well, we can see here we've got an issue because it should be 34. What? 34.18. So let's go ahead and take care of that right now. So let's get into global config, interface serial 000, IP address should be 64.100.34. And we said 18. And again, it's a /30. So my subnet mask in dotted decimal notation will be 255.255.255.252. Right? And so we hit enter there and take a look. Boy, we were given that was 20 points right there to catch that mistake. So we caught that mistake. The ports look correct, right? So everything else looks good. So we're going to go ahead and switch over here. Let's take a look on router 2. Again, I'm just kind of walking router by router here to see how things are configured. And we'll get onto the CLI, and let's go ahead and say show run, and let's take a look at what should be serial 001 here on router 2. And here it is, serial 001 on router 2. You can see we've got the IP address configured as .22, and that is correct. What I did not take a look at was looks like we have a default route configured, so I should have said show IP route on router 1. So nothing configured there. Let's see if they're going to look for us to add those default routes in. Again, we're sticking here, diagnose and repair incorrect port connections. So we'll take a look at router 3. And let's see how router 3 is configured. So we say show run. And router 3 should be using serial 000. It is. And is the IP correct? 34.26. It is. The subnet mask is correct. All right, so router 3 looks decent. Now let's take a look at router 4. So we'll stretch that out. And you can see it looked like router 4 is using serial 001. And that we know that because we had changed that connection earlier. So if I were to say show run, and we'll see. All right, so we've kind of run across something we haven't seen before here in some of the other output, and that is the encap PPP command. But let's first make sure the IP 3430, that is correct, and that is a /30, so things look good there. But now this encap PPP, remember that we saw on the telco router when I said show IP interface brief, that connection, that serial connection 011 over to router 4 was up, meaning the physical layer connectivity was there. However, it was down in terms of layer 2. And this is a very common error, or I shouldn't say error, a very common set of output that you will see when the error is the encapsulation at layer 2 doesn't match up. Remember, we talk about those different encapsulation types at layer 2. The frames that are being encapsulated. We have HDLC, which is technically CHDLC. It's sort of Cisco's version of HDLC. They took the standard and then they added their secret sauce. Then you have PPP, which is Mutually exclusive. Those are not compatible. I can't have one side of my serial connection being PPP and the other side of the serial connection using a different encapsulation, right? Like HDLC. So HDLC and PPP are not they're not what's the word I'm looking for? It's escaping me right now. They don't interoperate, right? You cannot use PPP on one side and HDLC on the other side. They have to be the same encapsulation. So that's what we're seeing here with this up-down. So how do we resolve this? Well, we've got two choices here, right? We can change the encapsulation on the telco side to PPP, and that would fix things. And so let's take a look and see how that would look. Let's get an interface serial 011, and I'm going to say encap PPP, and then we'll say do show, whoops, and you can see the protocol changed to up. So do show IP interface brief. So now we are up. But glancing over here, you can see your completion, you didn't get any credit. And if we look here at step 2, examine the end cap on the DCE equipment. All the serial interfaces should be using HDLC. So let's go ahead and say no end cap PPP. But again, I wanted to show you that that is a possible solution, albeit in this scenario here, they're not going to give you the points for it. It's not going to be what they're looking for, but that would fix the problem. As long as the encapsulation types on both ends match, we're going to be good to go. So we're back to HDLC here. Now, you'll notice that when I did say do show run, we don't see anything, and this was a great question I received from one of the learners this week. You don't see anything here in terms of where's the encap HDLC command? Or what if I would have said encap HDLC? When I say do show run, how come that doesn't show up? Where is that? Where is that? Why is it not there? And this is one of those sneaky little sort of Cisco quirks where when it's the default setting, 99.999% of the time, if it is the default behavior for the Cisco router or the Cisco switch for that matter, it's not going to show you the command in the show run output. You're not going to see it, right? And that is the case with the HDLC encapsulation, that if you're on a Cisco router and you're using serial links between the routers and their Cisco routers, the expectation and the default is that it's HDLC. If you want PPP, you're going to have to go in there and say encap, and let me show you this again, encap PPP, and now when we say do show run, under serial 011, we see that encapsulation set because, again, that is not the default setting. And so that's why we're seeing that. So let's come back here. We'll say Control A to get to the beginning of the line. And no encap PPP. Again, so we want HDLC. So again, this was one way to solve the problem. We saw that PPP was set here, so we change it up here to PPP to match. But that's not what they're looking for. Step 2 and Part 2 clearly says that we should be doing, let's get into global config, interface serial 001, that we should clearly be doing encap HDLC. And you saw there's two ways I could change that, right? I could say no encap PPP, which will then roll it back to its default of HDLC, or I could say encap HDLC. And how do we know it's HDLC? Well, when I said do show run, you can see that it doesn't say encap HDLC, or do show controllers should show me, or I'm sorry, not do show controllers, do show interface serial 0, was it 001? And we should see here, I'm sorry, was that right? It should have been do show, or did it go? There it is, okay. All right, you can see right here, encap is HDLC. So do show interface serial 001. It's going to show me what the default encapsulation is. So that's a few different ways to work that specific one. So again, the address table, we look good. And we fixed that DCE to DTE connection between the telco and router 4. So now we're at step 3. Diagnose and repair ports that are shut down. Remember, back here on the telco, when I say do show IP interface brief, we notice that we've got layer 1 and layer 2 are down. Now, if it was actually shut down, if on this router it was shut down, it would say administratively down. So typically when you see down, down, it's one of two things. Either there's no cable there, right? The cable's not connected. We've got a physical layer problem. And if you've got a layer 1 problem, you're going to have a layer 2 issue in most cases, right? If the physical cable's not plugged in, it's going to be tough to get in there and configure anything and have the HDLC and PPP connections come up. So if layer 1 is down, typically you're going to see issues with layer 2. And a layer 1 issue could be that it's shut down, which it doesn't look like it's shut down on the telco router, or the cable's just not connected, right? There's no cable there. But in this case, when we look at it, we see, okay, well, it's not administratively down here, but what about the remote end? So let's come over to router 1, and router 1 looks good because it showed up. So show IP interface brief, and our serial connection is up, so it's not shut down. But when we get to router 2 and router 3, you saw those red dots there. Chances are something is not right. Show IP interface brief. You can see it's showing down, down. So let's say show run, and what do we see? For the serial connection that we have configured, you can see that it's also not administratively shut down here. So something is up, right? Because it doesn't show that it's shut down. And actually, let me do show run. Let's make sure. Didn't see it earlier. Yeah, you can see there is no shutdown command on any of these interfaces. So what if I was to, over here on router 2, get into interface, get into global config first, and then we'll get into interface serial 001 and say no shut. So it's already no shut. But what if I said shut to administratively shut it down and then said no shut? You can see that the interface is still changing the status to down, right? So again, it says over here the ports should be working, or ensure that all of the ports are working and not administratively down, and enable the appropriate ports that are administratively down. So you can see that here we did that. Do show IP interface brief, but it still shows down, down. Well, on the telco router, does it say shut down, that any of these are shut down? Well, none of those are shut down. But what if I go into interface serial 001, and let's make sure, so we'll administratively shut it down, and then we'll say no shut. But what happens? The interface immediately is down, right? The interface is immediately down. And it's got me suspecting that it's possible here. And let me check. Actually, let me walk router 2 real quick. Serial 001, that's correct. And then router 3, I want to check to make sure. Show IP interface brief. I'm looking to make sure. Serial 000, that is correct. Just again, double checking. Oh, and it shows here that it is administratively down on router 3. So on router 2, there's another issue, but this is what we were looking for to see if it's administratively down. So let's get into global config, interface serial 000, and we'll simply say no shut. And that's going to bring that interface up. So it looks like the sole problem there on router, or I should say on step 3, is that it was shut down there. So what do we have here? So we've got all green lights, and now we've got this single red light connection here. So let's come back over here and take a look. We dealt with step 1, step 2, and step 3. So part 2 is diagnose and repair data link layer issues. So examine the clock, or examine and set the clock rates on the DCE equipment. So it's on the DCE side. It'll be on the provider side where the clock rate would end up being set. And so we see here that the clock rate should be set on each interface. Set the clock rate on any interface that requires it. So we come to the telco, and this is another reason that the physical clock rate, so we'll say do show run, needs to be set. So the clock rate is set on serial 000, 001, 010, and 011. And you can see here there's a little difference in what the clock rate setting has been set to, right? So we've got 2 million, 123, 123. So, or 2 megabits a second is the max clock rate we've set, but we've set the clock rate here to 4 megabits a second on those DCE interfaces on the customer side. So let's go ahead. We're going to make things uniform here because that connection is to 2 and that connection is to 3. And if we come on to 2 and we say do show run, let's take a look at the clock rate here. You can see that the clock rate is set to 2 million, right? Or 2 megabits, 2 million bits per second. So let's match that on the telco side. So let's get into interface serial 001. And we're going to say clock rate to 123, 123. And we'll set that to 2 million. Let's also do the same thing on interface serial 010. We'll say clock rate 2 million. And we'll match the clock rate settings on the telco side, right? And let's see, what do we have here on this side? On the customer side, should the clock rate be set on the customer side? And the answer is no. It's the telco that is driving the clock rate being set. So we get into interface serial 001 and we say no clock rate, and it wants the actual command. I'm sorry, left out the rate option there. No clock rate. So we'll say no clock rate. We'll pull it off the customer side, the DTE side. We're going to pull that clock rate off. So do show run. Let's make sure that it is off of router 2 serial 001. And you can see it looks like it's leaving it on there, right? So it's got it set on there, making me wonder if, and let's check router 3 here, do show run. Yeah, again, you can see that no clock rate set on this side on router 3, and we should not see a clock rate show run over here on the router 4 side, and we do not. So let's double check here on router 3 one thing. Show interface serial 00, what was it? 00 is 000. Do show interface serial 000. And let's make sure we've got the right end cap, and let's say do show controllers. And this, I thought this checked out, that this was the DTE side here. And maybe we didn't, yeah, it is the DTE side for serial 000. All right, so we're going to do, I'm sorry, wanted to be on router 2 there to run that command. Sorry about that. So do show controllers here. And this is the DTE side, and we do have do show interface serial 0/0/1, and HDLC is correct. So we're going to do this. We're going to actually go ahead and say exit out and say do show run. Make sure I'm looking at the right interface. I'm not turned around here on router 2 serial 001. All right, we've got the right IP. So here's what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and say, see if this command is in here. Default interface isn't in there. So let's go ahead and get into interface serial 001. No clock rate. 123, 123. That is right. 123, 123. And it's not allowing me to pull the clock rate off here. All right, so this is going to be, this is the one that's going to catch us here. Change the end cap. So we've already changed the end cap. We've already verified. Check the IP addressing. Connect any IP addresses that overlap. We've already corrected that. Let me take a quick look here to make sure that I'm not looking past something. Aha, and we cannot. Okay, so that's okay. Let's bail out here. And pull this back. So we've gone through each of the steps. And this is the step where we're having, or this I should say is the connection where we're having the issue here. So do show run. Let me make sure. All right, the clock rates are set. Let me double check my IP, 17, 21, 25, and 29, all /30s. And that is correct. 64, 134 is correct. We've got the clock rate matching on all of these. The end cap is HDLC on all of those. And so let's walk one more time here. Yeah, the clock rate is off. Make sure the interface is correct, 18. That's correct, but it's on router 2 here that it's throwing me for a loop. And let's say do show run. And the interface is not shut down. Okay, we see the default route there. Out the serial interface. Let's make sure router 1 had that same thing. Okay, so router 1 does have it. Okay, just double checking. So the clock rate on serial 001. So I'm going to do this. Let's see if this is what they are. Wait. Cancel that. All right, so let's see if this is what they are looking for us to do. And I'm going to add it back in with the DCE side here on serial 001 coming down to the the DTE side on 0, let me double check here, 001. Well, that's interesting. Okay. And now that I've done that, I think I remember having to do that before. So that was pretty interesting, that it forces you to actually delete the link, even though this side showed that it was the DTE side, and the other side showed that it was the DCE side. I'm positive that that's what that showed in the output there. I'd have to go back and look at that. And we're truncated. But yeah, that's really interesting that they have forced you to delete that link. Boy, that is a tricky one there, to just delete the link and then re-add the link in. So, but that got us to where we needed to be after double checking everything. And so let's one more do show run, and let's make sure the default route is down here. And there it is, default route out. And then on 4, we should see the same thing, show run. And the default route, yep. And actually, we've got an additional default route here on router 4. It only needs the route out serial 001, not out serial 000. So show IP interface brief. Yeah, we're not even using serial 000. So in fact, if I were to say show IP route, yeah, it's using it because the other interface is down. But let's get that other default route. So show run. Let me see if I can include route. There we go. Let's get into global config, and just to clean things up, because this is what you would want to do, because this is the right thing to do, is say no IP route with the quad zeros, and that would be through serial 000. And that's what we want. We don't get any points for it, but that's the correct thing to do. All right, well, hopefully this has helped you out. Again, though, that was a very tricky little issue right there between the telco router and router 2. So this is going to wrap up the solution set and tutorial for Packet Tracer Activity 3.1.2.7, where in Chapter 3 we read about HDLC, we read about PPP, and now we're applying those skills in order to solve real-world problems. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and good luck this week on your material.